Hey, it's Ollie, and now reading aloud in particular, is it a good thing to do? This is one of those things that seems to get people really fired up and draw a lot of interesting discussions and even arguments. But if you go to any school, any school around the world probably, and you walk into an English lesson or a language lesson, you will see teachers asking students to stand up and read aloud from the textbook. And so unsurprisingly, the question often comes up of, is it helpful to read aloud? Is reading aloud helpful as a language study method? Now, my answer to this is no. Almost, I would go so far as to say that it's almost useless as a study method, reading aloud, with one big exception, which is pronunciation and learning to speak. I guess practicing your intonation and pronunciation. Now let me explain why this is before I get a barrage of angry comments. Reading aloud is the same thing as reading a script, which is to say that you're not being creative in any way with the language. That means that there is very little of use, very little that is helpful for you then to go off and actually speak, because that's not what you're practicing. If you're reading aloud, you're simply reading words off a page, which has nothing to do with the way that you actually speak and interact with people. Now, this is not the same. Reading aloud is not the same as preparing a speech, for example. Something that's a very good language activity is to kind of write out a prepared speech, rehearse it many times, and then kind of deliver that. That's a fantastic thing to do. But that's not reading aloud. With reading aloud, we're talking about kind of opening up a textbook and just reading a page aloud once. It's not the same thing. The act of opening up a book and reading a page of stuff has nothing to do with the way that you actually use the language. And if you want any kind of extra proof of how kind of futile this activity is, if you open up, grab a book next to you, read aloud a page of what you find there, and then at the end of it, ask yourself, what did I just read? I guarantee you won't even have taken in half of what you said, because you would have been focusing on actually the words and reading the words aloud. Right? And anyone with memories of high school, or maybe anyone who's done this with a foreign language, will be able to identify with this. The fact that you read something aloud, often you don't take any of it in because you're just focused on saying the words. Which brings me to the one benefit of reading aloud, which is pronunciation. As I've said, you don't take much in mentally when you're reading aloud, but what you do have to do is pronounce the words. And so, as a pronunciation exercise, it can be useful, providing that you can kind of get feedback from someone, because you've got all the words there. There's no creativity, there's no spontaneity whatsoever required of you. All you have to do is say the words in front of you, which makes it a pure pronunciation exercise. But if that reading is designed as a pronunciation exercise, or if it's got a nice variety of words and phrases there, then it could be helpful for you to kind of sit and try reading aloud, because it will just give you practice forming the words in your mouth, speaking aloud the language. And ideally, if you can record yourself or get some feedback from someone, then that will help you, I guess, have a better idea of how accurate your pronunciation is. So, again, kind of a controversial opinion perhaps, but I would definitely recommend that unless you're actively trying to improve your pronunciation, that I would say you should not spend any time reading aloud in the language. It will not help you one bit. Feel free to voice your comments below. I expect you will, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.